Hello and welcome to Moonface Designs. In this video we're going to be tackling this wonderful cockerel. I'm not sure whether you can see him properly at the moment, but what we're going to be talking about is how the types of fabric actually affect the collage. So I'm going to do the collage, and as we go through it I will talk about the fabrics I've used and why I've used those fabrics. Depending on what fabrics you use, you can get a completely different feel to your collage. So if you buy one pattern, there are several different ways that you can do it. I like the realism of things, so that's how I'm going to be doing this wonderful bird today. I've zoomed out a little bit so that you can see the whole picture. I'll show you the pattern. So here he is. Isn't he wonderful? He looks quite mean and moody actually. And I'm really looking forward to getting cracking on this one. His approximate size is 30 inches by 20 inches. As we progress, I will zoom in a bit so that you can see what I'm doing a little bit closer. And then we will come back out again so you can see the whole collage at some point. So I thought I'd zoom right in so we can see the eye fairly clearly. So why did I choose the fabrics that I chose here? If you look at the pattern, it might give you a little bit of insight. So this particular piece here, this black piece here, generally when I do eyes, I like to put a flat black plain piece of fabric in there, especially if we've only got one source of light, which is this little white piece that's on top. If the pupil tends to have a lot more light in it, then yes, you could use a slightly different fabric for that to imitate what you're trying to say. A lot of times the fabric is really good at telling the story for you. So usually if you look into an eye, it's not one flat colour. I place my black piece and my white piece there. So there we have the light coming into the eye. And then around the edges and this red piece and this amber piece here, what I've done is I've chosen these two pieces of fabric, and it's got speckles in it, and the same with this one. It also has a fair few different colours in it as well when you look closely. So when you're actually checking out the eye, you can see when you're looking at it that it's not all one plain colour. When it comes to the brown piece, this also, I use this as it has interest on it. Although actually, when I'd actually cut the pieces out, it does look fairly flat. But it's only a very small piece, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Again, we've got the peachy colour pieces here. I used a fabric that's got different sploshes of colour on it. It just adds a little bit of interest. So this piece here that I've already marked out, I've cut, and that is a slightly lighter red than what is in the eye and what is this bit here. So what I usually do, I usually find the two pieces of fabric that I've already used, which are these two pieces here. And then I dig through my red box of colour here and find something that I know has got to be slightly lighter than those two pieces. So this was the piece of fabric that I came up with. So there's the piece that I've cut out. I've cut a bit in the middle because this is going to sit around here like this. And I just didn't want to have too many pieces of fabric in one place. So that will help me when I do my thread painting. There's less fabric for the needle to keep going through. So what I need to do now is I need to attach this. So I think what I do is I'll offer it up like this for the moment so that I can see that it's in the right place, like that. And then I'm going to put a little bit of heat on it, just here and over here. Now that's holding it in place for me. So I've just got to gently push these pieces through. The best thing to do really would be to take it off and stick this piece over the top. But by doing it this way, I'm hoping that it can be in exactly the right place. So I've pulled that bit through and I'm holding it as tight as I can. I think that's still okay. But it's worth taking your time to do this right. Now there's not too much of a difference between this one, the value of this one and the value of this one, but just enough to give it a bit of depth and not make it look glaringly obvious that it's two separate pieces of fabric. Hopefully when you start looking at it, you won't see lots of different pieces of fabric, you'll just see the complete collage as the picture. We have an awful lot of reds here, so I just need to make sure that I get enough contrast between my different reds. So I think that's the next thing I'll concentrate on, seeing if I can get maybe the beak and the rest of the red, sort of especially around this bit here first. So I haven't finished all of the reds yet, but I just thought I would talk to you about the reds that I've actually done so far. I have got quite a lot of reds, but sometimes you can just never find the right shade. I couldn't find something that was dark enough to go here. I had burgundies, but I didn't want to put a burgundy in there. I thought that was too dark. But by the same token, I couldn't find anything that fitted exactly what I needed. So I took this batik here, and I didn't think that was the right kind of red that I needed. I'll show you the pattern. So this was the red that I needed here, and those pieces there. It is quite dark, but I didn't want it to be too obvious, if that makes sense. I've used the same fabrics for around here, funnily enough. This piece of fabric here is the same as this fabric here, but it changes. You can see it here. So I use different parts of the fabric for different pieces, which is quite useful actually to find fabrics like that. This piece here I needed sort of like a darker piece and I couldn't find it. So I took my batik, and you can just see the last little bit of it there. I changed it with some Inktense pencils and some Caran watercolour crayons. These are my Caran. Now that I've bought these, I love using them, and you can make lots of colours from these by mixing, and they mix just like watercolour. But if I just wanted to put it straight onto the fabric, I struggle to find a colour that is the colour that I need. So I wish I'd bought a slightly bigger palette now. It just means that I have to mix the colour up first before I put it on top. But obviously what you need to do is you need to take into consideration the colour of the fabric underneath, and you need to take into consideration what it's going to look like when it's dried. The other thing I did on top of the Caran, which I could have done it all in the same crayons, but I used my Inktense pencils, and again I've got quite a few of those, but it's never enough. So all I would suggest is if you're going to buy anything like that, go for the biggest ones that you can. They're a lot more useful. You can make lots of colours up if you mix them yourself, which is absolutely fine, but sometimes it's just nice to grab the crayon, draw on top of the fabric, and then what I've been doing with it, so I can hurry the process up, is I've been putting some parchment paper over the top and putting the iron on it, and that dries it a whole lot quicker than waiting around for it to dry. Yeah, you can see the last little bit there, and I made sure that I did enough of it so that I could do this piece here. It might well be that I will have to do some more to a different piece of fabric, but you'll find that as well, that no matter how much fabric you've got, you've never always got the right colours. Then it was just a case of following the pattern and putting lighter and darkers in. Let's have a look at the bit up here that I'm currently working on. So this has been a very useful fabric. It's given me a lot of texture within the cone itself, and obviously once I thread paint it and put some more detail on it, I think that'll be perfect. It's got lots of light and dark in it, which is great. Now the bit that's here needs to be slightly darker than this, and then this bit needs to be slightly lighter. If you find your main piece of fabric, which is that piece there, what I did was I knew that the piece up here had to be darker. So this was the one I came up with. I put that one there like that. So that one is darker than that one. And then this one had to be lighter. So I chose that one. And it's very similar in value to this one, if that makes sense. They're very similar, aren't they? So they're the pieces that I'm going to use next to go in there. And with the rest of it, it was something very similar. This piece here had to be sort of like a pinky. Now, at the moment, I'm entering the messy stage where I'm starting to question everything that I do now. That is a normal stage to go through. I have to trust the process. If I show you this, for instance, let's move the camera out. Move the camera out a little bit more. These pieces in particular have caused me nothing but trouble and pain. Now, I'm not convinced that this is right at all, any of this here. But I have to trust the process. I did this piece first, and then I went on and did this piece next. And I wanted to take it all off and start again with this piece. But I didn't. I thought I'd leave it and show you. And what I decided to do then was to put the beak in and join this piece up here. So I think I'm going to leave that for now, and the next pieces I'm going to be doing are these pieces here, because these pieces here sit, let's have another look at the pattern. These pieces here are the pieces that sit over the top of the red piece. So what I need to do is I need to get all these pieces in. Once they're in and they're all moving together, just like this is, I will take that off of there and flip it back out of the way so that I can then do this big piece of red that's in here. Now, I think until I've got this piece of red in, and maybe this one and this one, which was these pieces that I was showing you, I think I'm still going to struggle to see whether this is okay. So all I would say is, you will go through a stage like this. I'm absolutely sure of that, because so many people that I've spoken to have the same thing happen to them, and it is a messy stage when really you can't see the wood for the trees. So I'm going to heed my own advice, and I'm going to leave it for the moment, carry on with some of the other reds and this piece here, as I've just explained, and then we can see if it's right. Because again, building all of these red pieces in here, it's important that this is right. Otherwise, it will have an effect on what fabrics I'm choosing to go in here. The problem I've had with this and this perhaps is it's quite pink. The pattern does show it pink, but now I've got it on there and it's in isolation, it's not really making much sense at the moment. So, like I said, I am just going to not worry about it for the moment and get some more colours under my belt. And I think once all this red here is done, so looking from the bird upwards, it will definitely give you a better perspective of to how the lights and darks will work down here. What I should have done was built the eye and then gone upwards before I decided to do this bit, but we'll just see how we go. So I wanted to show you the difference between two types of fabric. They're both equally suitable, but I think it just depends on what you're trying to convey. This is the piece that I think I'm going to go with, and all I've done, you can see I've finished all these pieces here, which I said I was going to do, and I've flipped them forward. And then I've just slipped a piece of fabric in there just so that I could kind of get a look of what it's going to be like. So I actually think that's quite nice. What I did was put a few different pieces of fabric in there and took a photo. And I think sometimes when you're looking through the lens, it's a little bit easier to see. And I just took a snapshot so that I could flip backwards and forwards between the photos just to make sure that what my head was saying looked right as well. So that's the first piece. And then this was another piece, and it's got a lot of interest going on. It needs to be lighter, this piece that goes in here. So as I said, both of these pieces would fit, but this one is just a little bit lighter, I think, in value than the other one. So that's the other piece. Obviously, at the moment, they're not all stuck down, so it will look a little bit better once it's actually attached to each other piece around it. And again, I think that still gives quite a good impression of what I want. I've got a couple of other fabrics, and we'll do that as a point of exercise. I think that one's just a little bit too light. I think we get a little bit too much of a definition between these pieces here. It doesn't flow nicely. I could use some Inktense pencils to blend it if I wanted to, but I think because I found the right fabric, I don't need to bother with that. This one is the same fabric as the first piece, but you can see it's got more mauve on it. This one has got pink, and it kind of blends a little bit better into the background colour. So we'll just pop this in. It's come from the same piece of fabric. I've just cut it so that it's easier to fit in my fabric box. So I mean, and we could move that so that we could have more perhaps of the green if we wanted to in it. And again, I think we could probably get away with that because the background colour is quite similar to that. So it would be just a case of choosing which piece I would like. And I think I'm probably going to go with this piece here. But we've got one more, and I thought it might be nice just to try something really colourful. So this is a bit of Kaif fabric, just to give it a bit of personality. It's always a little bit difficult to see exactly what we're trying to do when you're doing it so roughly like this, but you kind of get an idea. And actually, we could probably use that bit as well. It really depends what kind of personality you want to give your collage. If you want it to look more real, then although this isn't a real colour, it does look better in there than that one. This one will give the cockerel a little bit more personality, I guess. So I think I'm just going to fiddle with a couple of different pieces of fabric and decide fully. But I think what I might do is I might just cut it all out so it sits nicely, and I might just put some heat on it, but not make it one piece by heating these pieces and joining this to it, so that if once I've got a few other pieces in it, if I'm still not happy with it, I can take it off without too much of a problem. Okay, so now I've pulled the camera back again so that you can see all of the reds that I've done. Now, it is finished bar the last couple of pieces up here. Once it was finished like this, I left it for a little while. I had a break and I put it somewhere where I could see it. So every time I went up and down the stairs, I was able to take a quick glance at this to see if there was anything that I wasn't happy about. The other thing I did was take a black and white photo, so hopefully you can see that. And at the moment, things are looking okay. I think this really dark piece here is giving kind of a shadow to the pieces that are forefront here. However, I'm still not sure if that is too dark. And if you look at everything else all works okay. So it's just this piece here really now that I'm still unsure about. All these other pieces around it I think work fine. What I might try and do is find something that is a similar value to that, but has a little bit more pattern. I mean, this does have darks and lights on it, but I think I need to find something with a little bit more movement, only because the rest of it has got quite a lot of movement within the patterns. As you can see, I did choose this piece here, and I used the piece that I said I was going to use with more pinkies in it, and I think that will probably blend nicely when I do my thread painting. I might put some more Inktense pencils on it at some point to give a little bit more definition, but I don't want to do any of that yet until I'm happy with the rest of the collage, because it might well be that I won't need it, but we'll see. Again, it's just in progress, so it's quite difficult to tell how it's all going to look when it's got the other fabrics around it. Now, this piece here is also causing me concern. On the black and white, it looks fine. I'm just not happy with the patterns of it. And looking at the pattern, let's come in nice and tight to that. Looking at the pattern, the values here and the value here, and indeed there, are very similar. If we take another look at the collage, that piece there we said was this piece here. So when I came to do the collaging of this piece, I'd already done this fabric in here. So that's kind of how I knew that that fabric needed to go in here as well. In theory, I could use this fabric over here, and that might give a slightly different look to the collage. I like really, if possible, to use a piece of fabric at least twice within a collage. This piece has only been used once at the moment, and I don't think that we will have the opportunity to use it anywhere else. I might be able to put it up here somewhere, and if I can't do that, then okay, sometimes you can only use it once within your collage, but there is always the opportunity to swap it out for this piece. So as I said, I'm going to get everything else in around it and take a look at it. It might well be that I will cut another piece the same shape as this and audition it and see how I feel about it. But if it works with everything else around it, then it's probably not worth trying to take it all off. So at the moment, so far so good, I think. Now, the pieces up here are purple. So I'll show you the pattern again. So you can see it turns purple at the top. I think it's just, they usually tend to get a little bit battered at the top, don't they? So I dug out some purples, which was this one, but actually it was too purple. I think it was too purple. So what I did was I got out my Inktense pencils again, and this one has had Inktense pencils on this side, and they're the Inktense pencils that I used. First of all, I used one colour, and I liked how it looked, but I thought it needed to be a little bit darker, so I added another colour over the top. This side, I don't know if you can see it, it's probably a little bit more shiny. That is now the Caran crayons. And these are the colours that I used. First of all, I put some red on. Then I put some purple, but it was too purple. It was quite nice. So then I added some red back over the top again. And you can see they're fairly similar colours, actually. I've produced fairly similar colours here. And I think that we're going to have enough contrast now when that goes on there. It still looks purple, but it doesn't look a severe cut off and then going to purple, if that makes sense. They are slightly different colours, but I think probably with what I've got there, or another little play if I need to, I will be able to get the colours that I need up there. And then I think I'm going to start doing some of the feathers here. I think that's a good idea because it will actually make the cockerel look how he should. At the moment he looks long and skinny, and it's still quite difficult to work out how that fits in with everything else. It just goes to show you that your fabric choices will make your collage look different. And this is one thing that I really love with patterns. Someone else can buy the pattern, and because their fabric stash or the fabric they choose is different to how I'm doing it or anybody else is doing it, although you get something that looks very, very similar, each pattern takes on its own personality. I absolutely love to see the collages finished, made by other people. So I think I'll crack on with those pieces again, then we'll come back and discuss those particular fabric choices. I've had to pull the camera right out so that you can actually see the whole of the cockerel. So we're getting there now. I just need to do the last pieces of the feathers at the bottom. So I think that the piece at the top up here has gone really well, and that blends quite nicely. The second piece of purple is a little bit dark, and the way I'm going to get around that is to blend with some Inktense pencils just a little bit here so that it blends gently and it doesn't change colour abruptly. I think that's the way to go with that. This piece here is the second piece of fabric that I chose. I think it's supposed to be just a little bit darker than that, but I didn't want to put a black in there because I thought that would be too harsh. The fabric that I found initially was this fabric, but obviously it goes in two directions. So if I did something like that, it would have gone in the wrong direction, if you see what I mean. It's difficult to explain. So what I did was I cut it in two parts. I cut the first part that way on, and then this one I put it on the squiff so that it made the movement within the fabric. I mean, it doesn't look too bad sitting on the top of that one. I just thought the change from one to another was a little bit harsh. What I think I might do is just put a little pin in it and leave it like that for a little bit and walk backwards and forwards past it like that. And then I'll be able to see which piece I prefer. When I did this piece to start with, I thought it was far too harsh. Now I've got some of the other bits in, I don't think it's too bad. So again, you know, it depends on the type of fabric that you're using, and it can make quite a difference. This piece of fabric here, these are the right values here, but I've put a little bit of Inktense pencils. You can probably see actually there's a bit of a mark along there where I darkened it down. I still need to feather that in a little bit more. It might be because it's still slightly wet. So I'm going to wait until that's dried, see how we go with that. And it might mean that I have to extend it a little bit more and feather it out a little bit more so that it goes from the darker bit into the slightly lighter piece there. I have put a little black line here, which actually, if you look at the reference photo that I've used, it also has a little black line there, which is quite useful because it actually helps define the bird's beak from the feathers. This piece, I said, was causing me a lot of problems, but I think actually as the feathers are building up around it, I think, fingers crossed, it might be okay. Once these last few feathers are done, it's a case of just finishing off the background. Now the background's going to be green, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that very simply because I want that to recede so that the cockerel is front and centre and is the star of the show. So I'll worry about how I'm going to do the background once I've completed the feather stage here. So let's just crack on with the rest of the feathers, and then we will come back and start thinking about the background. Well, that's a cockerel finished. It just took a bit of time just to fill in all the smaller pieces of fabric down here. And that side didn't give me too much of a headache. This side, I lost my mind actually with this side. The last time I spoke to you, we had just a fair piece of this top part done and all of this bottom piece wasn't finished. It was this piece here that caused me to lose my mind actually. The fabric before was this fabric, and because there was also this piece of fabric here, and I know I said I like to use the pieces of fabric a couple of times, it was a great big piece here and I thought it was too much. And I didn't think it balanced the cockerel properly. So I looked at what colours we had on this side. I changed it to this piece of fabric here. Again, there was too much of it. So I wanted to add in just a couple of feathers of my own. So that is the underlying piece. So the pieces I chose to add into it were these colours here. And all I did was I made another feather here, another feather here, and another feather here. And then I just got a couple of browns and added these pieces in. And actually I have to say I'm happier with that now. The other piece that I changed was this piece here. That was this piece. And once I had this in, I didn't think it looked quite right. So I changed it for this one, which has got a little bit more interest in it. I have to say it wasn't easy. It was quite difficult to get the other pieces of fabric out. You probably could see just little bits of frays along there, which most of the time you don't get within the collage. I mean, you are going to get some fraying. It is actually raw edge, isn't it? That's why it's called raw edge. But because I use Bondaweb on the back, you don't tend to get too many frays. That will probably all disappear when I do my thread painting. I remember saying I wasn't happy with this piece here, but now we've added another piece down here of the same colour. I don't think it's too bad, but I'm just going to sit with it and see how I feel about it before I start the background. This piece here took an awful lot of time to sort out, so I kind of lost my rhythm really, but it didn't take long to get back into it to do the bottom part. Standing back and looking at the collage, I think this piece is okay now, and that's what I mean about trusting the process. In hindsight, I still think this piece is the better piece than the stripy piece that we had yesterday. So the background is fairly simple. We've got really big pieces of colour. So if I can find some fabric that has plenty of interest in it, I might use that. If I can't, then what I will do is I will take that colour that's in there and find a few pieces of fabric that have the same value or very, very similar values, and I will put smaller pieces in each larger section. So I've started the background now. I decided instead of doing large pieces of fabric, I wanted to do the smaller pieces, and that way I'd have a little bit more control as to how I wanted it to look. So the first thing I decided was that I wanted the lighter greens this side because we've got the darker fabrics here. So that makes a nice light and dark, and so it stands out nicely. And then I was able to move through the lighter colours and then start on the slightly darker colours and then come down to all darker colours, which is next to this lighter fabric here. So how did I do that? Well, what I did, I took myself a piece of parchment paper and I held it on here in place, and then I drew around the pieces that I needed to put my fabric on. So this piece here is the lighter piece. When I come to do the top piece, I'm doing slightly different greens again. So not the same as these ones, not the same as these ones, completely different ones. It will probably have a couple of these in it to start with, and then that will help give the change movement. Once I've drawn around that, let's move the camera in so that you can see what I mean. Now, bearing in mind that I actually I would do this on a flat surface. If you're already working on a flat surface, then it becomes easy. But because I like to work on an easel, this is why I've done the sort of template that I need so that I can work flat. And I'm not sure whether you can see, probably a little bit here, where I did my shape, which was definitely all the dark greens. And then I did my next shape, which was slightly darker greens moving into the lights. So that piece there is a different piece of parchment to this template here. So if you look at this template, you probably can't see that very clearly. You probably can't see the pencil marks on it, but essentially it sits there like that. And that means that I know where I can put my fabric, and obviously it doesn't go right over there for the minute, but that's fine. And then I know that this whole piece needs to be fabric. And then once it's done, I can just lift these up and slide those underneath it. So assuming I'm working on a flat surface, what I've done, I've cut a whole load of small fabric. This isn't all of it, it's just really to show you. And then what I do on a flat surface is I just get a whole load of different colours and I pick them up randomly. Just hold a few like this so you can see what I'm doing. Something like this, making sure I've got no gaps in it. And then I would take my iron and put a bit of heat on it to set that bit, and then I'd carry on working away until I'd worked out and done my whole shape. You can kind of see where it's at, and then obviously when I come to do my thread painting or my quilting, I'll just make sure that I go through every single piece. So it will probably be something like a meander stitch, or it might be something that resembles leaves. I'm not quite sure yet. So I'll just finish off this top piece and then you can come back and see the whole thing finished. So there we go, one beautiful cockerel finished. And I think that the really light, sort of almost lime green colour at the top just lifts the collage a little bit, and I think it just gives the impression of where the light's coming from. So I have to say I'm quite proud of that. I'm really pleased how it's turned out. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to peel it off of the parchment paper. It's quite easy. And then I'll be able to see if there's any gaps underneath, in which case I will slide a little bit of matching fabric underneath before I actually steam it onto the background wadding and think about starting to thread paint. If you like my video, then it'd be great if you would subscribe to the YouTube channel and maybe comment. Thank you for spending time with me. It's been great spending time with you. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Goodbye.